My butt's falling asleep. Why am I off center? I tried to email the program and be like, hey, can I go to Madrid? And they're like, no. We're not a mess, but like we're a mess adjacent. Okay, we're back. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, As Told by Gabby. I'm Gabby, and today I wanted to talk about how I was able to move to Spain by myself at 22. Let's get into it. How did I move to Spain? What am I doing here? I moved here in the fall of 2019 after graduating in the spring of 2019. I teach English here through the Spanish ministry in a program called the North American Language and Culture Assistance Program, or NALCAP for short. It is a mouthful, but I discovered this program while I was studying abroad in 2017, and I waited until the spring semester of my senior year of college to apply. So how did I find out about the program? While I was studying abroad, I did a solo trip, and on that trip, I met a group of students from Ohio State University. If you're watching this, hey guys, hey, it's been a minute. But I remember one of the guys who was on the trip was a senior. He had just finished his senior year. I had just finished my sophomore year, and we stayed in contact through Instagram. And then a few months later, I noticed that he was back in Spain. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, how are you? What are you doing in Spain? Like, blah, 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 blah. And he was the one that told me about the program. He didn't really tell me much about it, and I didn't ask him too much about it. He basically was just like, Google it, in a very nice way, obviously, but like Google is free, so like, please use it. So I Googled it and I found out about the program. I did my research through blogs, through YouTube channels, and through websites, and found out that it was legit. This was like pre-TikTok and like really anyone really talking about the program. I literally never heard of the program before. I think I asked my Spanish teacher at the time about it, and she was just like, I mean, I know people live there, but she didn't know too much about it either. So I would definitely suggest doing your own research. I can tell you that it is legit, and there are other programs like it through Medeas and Beta. I can't really speak to those programs because I don't work for those programs, but I highly recommend the ministry. So what made me want to move to Spain? Honestly, I've always kind of had this like fascination with Spain. I remember when I first started learning Spanish in middle school and high school, whenever we had to do projects on like different countries, I always without fail chose Spain. Part of it was laziness because I already knew facts and things about Spain, and then part of it was just genuine interest. So when I got the opportunity to study abroad, I jumped at it and I loved it so much. I wish I could have stayed for longer. I did a summer program that was only 6 weeks. Because I didn't really have the time to do a full semester, but looking back on it, I wish I had. But also, people who do a full semester look back on it and they're like, dang, I should have done a year. People who do a year, I'm like, I should have just done my whole undergrad there, which is possible, so I would research that as well. But yeah, I just did lots and lots of research. I read people's blogs. I reached out to people who I like kind of loosely knew that were here. There was this girl who had graduated before I even started college, but we followed each other. We had mutual followers on Twitter, so I reached out to her because I noticed that she was living in Spain and she was in this program, and she was really helpful and answered a lot of my questions. So she was super helpful, so thank you to her. I knew about the program for about 2 years before I actually applied because I knew I wanted to do it after I graduated. But I also got a job offer the summer after my junior year of school, so I was deciding between a job and going to Spain. And I remember the recruiter told me, we were like pretty close because I worked with him directly during my internship, and he said, well, what's your hold up for like signing an offer letter? And I told him about my program. I was like, yeah, I'm deciding between this and Spain. And he literally told me to go. He was like, you should go to Spain. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, when are you ever going to be able to do this? When are you ever going to be this young? He was like, do you have a car? I was like, no. He's like, do you have a house? I was like, no. He's like, do you have a boyfriend? We were close at this point, so he could ask me something like that. It wasn't wild for him to ask me that. And I was like, no. He's like, you don't have anything really attaching you to the US. I was like, my family. He's like, your family will be here. I was like, you're right. Points were made, sir. So you know when your recruiter at your job is telling you to go, that you should go. And that was nothing to speak about the company that I was working for, because I actually loved the company I was working for, and that's what made it so hard to decide. So in 2019, the application opened in January. I am a procrastinator and did not apply, I think, until the end of March. And it was only after my friend like forced my hand, because I'd been talking about this opportunity with my friends before, like just weighing my options and hearing what they had to say. All of them unanimously all of them agreed that I should go. And one of my friends, Rebecca in particular, was very on top of me. She would ask me every day. She'd be like, did you apply yet? Did you apply yet? Did you apply yet? And I used to go and sit at her job with her and just talk with her. And she'd be like, you still haven't applied yet. And it was March. She was like, when did the application open? I was like, January. And she was just like, do not come back here until you've applied. So that week I applied, and yeah, I think I heard back about being accepted into the program. I want to say it was like May or June. But also I wasn't really worried about whether or not I would be accepted into the program, because all the research I had done had said that like if you meet all the requirements, they will place you. It may not be where you want to be placed, but they'll place you. So my first choice was Madrid, because that's where I studied abroad. That's what I was familiar with. That's where I really wanted to go. I did not get Madrid. So I think it was June, like late May or early June, when I found out that they give you your region first. So I was assigned the region of Valencia, which is a beautiful region, but I was just like, I asked for Madrid. So I tried to email the program and be like, hey, can I go to Madrid? And they're like, no. So then I had a decision to make. I was just like, is me doing this program dependent on me being placed in Madrid? And I really sat and thought about it, and I was like, no. Are you gonna go either way? And I was like, yeah. I had been to the Valencia region when I studied abroad. We did like a weekend trip there, so it wasn't that wild to me to go. But like naturally I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted to be placed in Madrid again. But by this point I'd already turned down my job offer, even though they made it very clear that I could come back if I decided. But at this point I was all in. I was like, all right, you made this decision, now it's time to get to it. So I actually got my city and school placement in July, the first week of July. I want to say it was like the day before the 4th of July. Which seems like it's like a long process, because I applied in like what, March or April. I found out about the region in like May or June, and I got my placement in July, and I'm supposed to start working in October. And in somewhere within here, I'm supposed to book my flight, find somewhere to live, find a visa, do all of these things. So it is a pretty quick turnaround. Me finding out so late is partially my fault, because I waited so long to apply. It's a first come first serve situation. So I think my application number was like somewhere in the 3,000s. And thank God for the Facebook groups, because, which I found through a blog, the Facebook groups, people would post like what number they were, what region they got, and when they found out. So like I could tell when they were getting closer and closer to my number. I was like, okay, I should know by next week. Hopefully I'll know soon. So yeah, shout out to the Facebook groups. If you're not in them, I will link them below. I believe you have to like submit some information before they let you into the group, but it is super helpful. And I honestly don't know if I would have made it here on my own without the information in those groups, because I was literally flying blind. I think I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but I'm not a very type A person. I'm very much so go with the flow, figure it out as I go along. But when you're doing like a visa process and moving to a separate country, you kind of gotta like not be type A, but you gotta put like more research and think more further ahead and plan a little bit more. So that was new for me. So thank God for that group, because oh girl, we're not a mess, but like we're a mess adjacent. So we need the extra help. So after the application process came the visa process. And the visa process is kind of tricky, because you can't really do much to start the visa process until you have that offer letter from the program saying, hey, this is your school, this is your contract, because all of that information needs to be submitted with your background check and like your fees and other things, and your health records. So, and like I believe like your background check and your health records can't be more than like 90 days old. So if you start doing all of that in January and you don't get your contract until July, you'll have to do it again. So I waited until I had my contract in hand to start that process, and it is kind of a lengthy process. I would love to give like a step-by-step, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, but when it comes down to it, it depends on what state you live in. Like I live in Virginia in the US, so I go to the Washington DC consulate. I believe that Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina all go to the Washington DC consulate. So our rules are different from people who are in California or New York. I know that my roommate last year, She went to the embassy in California, the consulate, and they required her to translate documents that she had to pay for. She had to pay for a professional to translate her documents to Spanish. I didn't have to do that. So the application process for the visa for her was really expensive because she had to do different things. Mine was also somewhat expensive, but it would have been more expensive had I had to pay someone to translate my documents, which I didn't. So definitely go to the website of the Spanish embassy in your state or whichever consulate you're assigned to and look for that information. I can try and link it in the box below. And also, to be honest, I did this process like 3 years ago, so it could be different from now, so I don't want to give wrong information. But I will provide the resources for you to find the correct information. And also the Facebook group is very helpful. I use that as a resource to ask questions and get clarification on things that I needed to do. And the tricky part is some consulates are kind of far away. Like my roommate, my first year, I believe he lived in Kansas, and I think he had to fly to Chicago to go to his consulate. And like people in Florida also kind of have a similar situation because their consulate is in Miami, I believe. But also, please double check all of these facts. This is why, like, I love to answer questions. I have no problem answering questions, but like it's very specific to your situation. So that's why I'm like, you have to research it. Flights. So I want to say I started looking for flights before, well actually no, I didn't. I couldn't start looking for flights until I knew what city I was placed in to know where to fly. Like, should I fly into Madrid? Should I fly into Barcelona? Most people, no matter where they're placed, typically fly into Madrid because they have really good train and bus systems that can disperse you throughout the country. But I was just like, if I can fly closer to where I want to be, like that would be smarter. So I was kind of like watching the flights ish because the program starts October 1st. Even if it's the middle of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever day it is, it starts October 1st. For example, this year, the first day of work was on a Friday. So I started work on a Friday. So I knew I needed to be there before October 1st. But other than that, like in the Valencia region at least, our orientation is after we start work. So like you just have to be there by the first day of work or communicate to your school that you're not going to be there by your first day of work. From the blogs and the Facebook groups and everything that I had seen, they recommended getting there like 2 to 3 weeks before you're supposed to start work, and maybe even a little bit further ahead if you live in Madrid or Barcelona, like a larger city where it's a bit different or a bit more difficult to find housing because it's a lengthy process. There's more people, there's more options, and like Madrid, I think I talked about this in another group, housing there is highly competitive. I did not enjoy it. It was not a fun time. It was quite difficult, but in Alicante, for example, it wasn't as difficult. So you really want to get there in enough time that you have time to find housing, you have time to settle in, you have time to, if you want to, furnish your house. I personally look for options of housing that's already furnished, but I like to put like my own personal touches, like maybe a little pillow here, some little lights over there, things like that. You want time to settle in and get yourself together, because something that I didn't know okay, listen y'all, when I applied for my visa in the DC consulate, I thought that was it. I thought I was good. Ya está. They mailed me my passport back with my visa in it. I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is for 3 months. This expires in December. Expires in December. Why does it expire in December? Because you have to finish the visa process when you get here. I didn't know that. Like, this visa is to help you get here and give you the time to like actually get your identification card when you get here. Like when you get here, you have to go to like the police station and a whole nother process of finishing your visa. That's a whole separate video. Yeah, but I didn't know that. So this is why I'm saying, like, please research, because when I tell you I had already had my flight booked, already had my Airbnb booked, I was about to leave for Spain when I figured this out. Luckily, I had already done all I could do in the US. Like, I didn't need to do anything else. Like, everything else I needed for like the rest of the process was gonna happen in Spain. But imagine if I had needed something. Imagine. I don't want to imagine. Okay, so how long does the visa process take? Also depends on where your consulate is. I know with the pandemic, especially when it first started, a lot of the consulates were moving a lot slower, a longer wait time. I submitted my documents in like mid to late July. like my medical records, my background check, all of that good stuff. I got my visa early September, mid-September, early September. Here's the thing though, some people recommend you don't buy your flight until you do the visa process. We've already established that I am sometimes too nonchalant about things. I was like, it'll come, it'll come. Luckily it did, but imagine if it hadn't. Imagine if it hadn't. So I would say definitely talk to your consulate and see like, hey, about how long does this take? Because if my visa hadn't arrived, I would have had to change my flight, which could have potentially been expensive. So make sure you're submitting all your documents in enough time. For your background check, in some states, I don't know if this is in all states, you have to get it apostilled. What does that mean? I want to say it means like certified or something. I don't know. All I know is that I had to like mail it off somewhere and they had to mail it back to me, and that took a few weeks, and that was before I went to the consulate and submitted all my documents. So there are lots of things that you have to like mail out and get received back and things like that. From start to finish, I would give yourself like a 3-month buffer of trying to figure everything out visa wise. Will it take the full 3 months? Probably not, but better safe than sorry, right? So back to flights, because we got a little bit off topic. So I had an internship the summer before I moved to Spain to help me save money. So I chose to work up until the very last minute. So I arrived in Spain like a week or a week and a half before I was supposed to start work. I came here like the 22nd or 23rd or something like that, and we were supposed to start October 1st. People had already been here. Some people get here the first week of September, some people get here the second week of September, some people who are renewing just stay the whole summer. So but everyone generally arrives within like 2 to 3 weeks before you're supposed to start working. Hindsight is 2020. I wish I had came a little bit earlier because I had enough time to get things done, but I was very rushed and I felt like slightly overwhelmed. So if you want more time to like relax and just kind of like explore the city or travel a little bit before you start working, definitely come earlier. I flew TAP Air from Washington DC to Lisbon, and then Lisbon straight into Alicante, which was amazing. And TAP Air is really cool because they do stopovers. Stopover is basically a layover, but you can make it short, like normal 2 to 6 hours, however long layovers usually are. Or you can do 24 hours. I was like, you know what? That's kind of cool. I was like, I can fit in another trip within my trip. So I did a stopover in Lisbon. I spent 24 hours there because I was because my layover was longer than 20 or 22 hours. I had to pick up my checked bag, and I was able to go into the city. I booked an Airbnb and I just walked around the city and explored by myself. It was my first solo trip on my first big move abroad, so that was really cool. I really want to go back there because I was only there for a short amount of time. But if you have the opportunity to do a stopover, 10 out of 10 would recommend. A very cool way to see the city, and it didn't cost me any more. I already found a pretty decently priced flight. I think my flight was like $300 or $400. So yeah, but the stopover made it that much more fun because I think my Airbnb in Lisbon was like less than $50 a night. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but it was something really affordable. I met a really cool Uber driver who picked me from the airport. We were talking, I had fun. I met some people while I was out, and I just got to explore a new city before starting my new adventure. Depending on where you are placed, that is dependent on where you will fly into. I could have flown into Madrid and then taken the train from Madrid to Alicante, but when I was comparing prices, it was like gonna cost me the same to fly to Madrid as it would to fly to Alicante, which is not always the case. Some cities don't have an airport, so you have to fly in somewhere and then take the train or a bus or a blah blah car, which is like a ride sharing app situation. But yeah, so make sure you know where your school is before you buy your flight, because you can make things harder than they need to be by doing that. What to pack? Honestly, we all do it. We all overpack. However, honestly, it's just a fact of life. Your first year, you're gonna overpack. I overpacked my first, second, and third year. It's okay. I flew here with one checked bag, one carry-on, one backpack, and I was able to finesse like a canvas bag to carry on the plane. And that's all I had for the entire year, I believe. My bag was overweight, my checked bag was overweight, so I did have to pay a little bit extra because I just didn't have the time to repack my bag. I was late, I was gonna be late for my flight. So But I would say it's heavily dependent on where you're going to be living as well. Madrid and other places that are further north are a bit colder, so you should plan for that. Alicante, it doesn't really get cold here till like late October, early November, like cold, and then like kind of like winter vibes weather till like December, January. So I didn't really need to wear a jacket outside until November, but definitely study the climate in your area and plan for that. The schools here, the dress is rather casual in my opinion, so like you can wear jeans, you can wear sweaters, sneakers, as long as you're like covered up decently, you should be fine. Pack staple pieces. Don't pack like costume pieces. If there's something that you could only wear for one specific occasion, do not pack it, because you're only going to be able to wear it for that one specific occasion. Pack things that like lots of blacks, lots of neutrals, like things that you can build wardrobes around. That way you don't feel the need to buy a bunch of things when you get here, and you don't really have the space to buy a bunch of things once you get here. Also, like, Spanish style and European style is a bit different from the US. To be honest, I dressed a little bit more skimpy when I was in college, like tighter and shorter dresses and like crop tops when I was going out, like nothing crazy, but I do a lot of walking here, and I do a lot of walking at night, especially when I'm going out, and I personally just wouldn't feel comfortable walking around in like a really short dress in heels in Spain at night, not necessarily because I'm scared, but in the US I was taking Ubers, I was taking cars, I was going from car to location, location to car, and like it's kind of hard to explain, but I feel like y'all understand what I'm getting at, you know? And then also, don't pack skinny heels. I don't wear skinny heels out. I feel like that's a great way to try to break my ankles. There's like cobblestones and uneven walk, and it's just an uneven sidewalks, and there's just a lot of walking. You don't want to be walking around skinny heels unless you're a pro walking around skinny heels for like 8 hours. I would not recommend. I didn't really change my style, but I kind of like adapted it more to be more convenient, more comfortable, more versatile. And also I moved here during like a part of my like adulthood, like a coming of age part of my adulthood, so I was still like finding my style. So I'm 25 now, but I moved here when I was 22, so my style when I moved here when I was 22 is a bit different from now that I'm 25. Has it had like a European influence? Probably, because I've been here for 3 years. Personally now, when I travel home to the US, even when I go for the summer for like 2 months, I only bring a carry-on. I haven't checked a bag in 2 years. Usually like my backpack and my carry-on are enough. 1, because I have clothes at home. 2, because I have a sister at home and I can wear her clothes. And 3, because I don't like paying for checked bags, and I usually end up just overpacking anyways and not wearing anything. Like even with my carry-on bag, there's still stuff in there that I don't wear when I go home, even when I'm home for like 8 weeks. So especially in the summer, it's a lot easier because you don't really have to pack jackets and things like that. I went on a 10-day road trip through 3 different countries with just a backpack, and I'm not gonna say I'm high maintenance, but I'm not low maintenance, so it can be done. Housing. So I do not recommend paying any type of deposit or any type of rent before you've seen it with your own eyes. I touched on this in a video I made a couple years ago, but there are a lot of scammers out there, and even if someone's not scamming you, sometimes you get to the location and the house just is not what you're expecting. There are smells you don't like, the street is noisy, maybe you and the roommates don't vibe, maybe the neighbors are loud, maybe the pictures are photoshopped. Like a lot of things can go wrong when you haven't seen it with your own eyes. I get it, you want to rush and see the first thing that you see, or you want to like snack something before someone else takes it, but I promise, please just wait till you get here to do it. That's what I did. I booked an Airbnb for a week to give myself time to find somewhere to live, and I was able to find something within that week in Alicante. I think if you're in Madrid or Barcelona, maybe give yourself like 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. It's a little bit harder to find housing there. But so we use apps. I'll link them below. Idealista, Body, and you can use Facebook groups as well if you want. And I kind of saved and favorited all the houses I liked. Some of the ones that I liked were taken before I arrived, and that's fine. But I reached out to the owners a few days before I arrived in Spain, and set up appointments to see the places. And that's how I was able to find housing. I kind of had a budget because we make 1,000 euros a month, which is very livable here. But if I'm paying like 500 or 600 euros in rent, like that makes it less livable, you know. So, and areas like Madrid and Barcelona, it'll be more common to find rent that high. I'm sorry, you shouldn't be paying anywhere near that if you live in Alicante, personally, in my opinion. My first year, the first place I ever lived in, my rent was $250, and that was too much for what I was getting. Like, I had 4 other roommates, 1 bathroom. It was a very old building, 4th floor, no elevator. Like, but I loved the location. It was in the center of everything, and I liked the price because it was like 1/4 of what I was making. And I was like, I'm gonna have so much money to travel and eat out, but listen, it wasn't worth it. I only lived there for 2 months. The second place I lived in was a couple streets over, still in the center, but it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom with an elevator, and it was $650 for the whole place. Me and my roommate split that, $325 each, and then we had to pay electricity, water, and gas on top of that. So I think total monthly I paid like $360, $365 in the winter. More expensive, but definitely worth it because I liked where I was living. I liked who I was living with. I just really liked the apartment, and thank God we did that, because 3 or 4 months later we went into lockdown in Spain for COVID. So we were stuck in that house for 2 months. We were not allowed to leave, only to go to the doctors or to get groceries, food. Imagine if I had stayed in the house I didn't like for 2 months. I would have gone back to the US. I would have been out. And a lot of people did leave and go back to the US. I know one of my friends didn't really enjoy her living situation, and at the time we thought the lockdown was only going to be 2 weeks, 4 weeks. So she's like, oh, I'll just go home, do the lockdown there, and come back. She did not come back, obviously, because COVID was a lot more serious than I think we originally realized. Every place I've lived in so far, I've either found on Idealista, Facebook, or through like word of mouth, or through a friend of a friend. Where I'm living now, I found through a friend of a friend. This place is 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. It's pretty large, a little bit further from the center, which I like because it's quieter, but still walkable. And I am paying $325 plus gas, plus water, and plus electric. So I think still very affordable. There are even cheaper places out there. There are more expensive places out there. If you're living like center, like in the barrio, in with where the restaurants and the clubs and things are, you're gonna be paying more. Some landlords are even up to negotiate with you as well. Like if it's like towards the end of the season where people are arriving, like mid-October, late October, where most of the study abroad students are already here and most of the teachers are already here, and there's not really a high demand, you can probably negotiate a rather good price. Roommates. As far as roommates, my first year I met my roommate through Facebook. We didn't meet in person until we arrived in Spain, but we did the housing search together, and I lived with her in the first and the second place. We moved into that 5-bedroom place together, and then we moved out together to our own place. My second year I moved to Madrid, and I found my housing through the Body app, and the house was already full when I moved in. I didn't know any of them. 1 girl was American, 2 girls were Spanish, and no, the girl and the guy were Spanish, and the other girl was from South America. I forget which country, but they were already living there. Only the American girl and the girl from South America spoke English. The other 2 only spoke Spanish, which was cool. I was able to practice my Spanish. When I moved back to Alicante, I lived with my friends because they had an extra room. This house was found through a friend of a friend, and my current roommate I met in Alicante. Hey, let's talk about finances. I am not a finance guru. I'm not a very good budgeter. I'm very much so YOLO. So I don't have much finance or budgeting advice to offer. I can only just tell you what I did / what I currently do. I saved before I got here because you don't start working until October, which means you don't get paid theoretically till November. The Valencia region is notorious for paying late, and I knew that coming here because they had talked about it in the Facebook group. The admin who run the group had warned us, so I planned for that. I made sure I saved all of, or at least most of, my internship checks and my graduation money because I had just graduated. it still wasn't enough. I should have saved more. I was able to make it work by doing private classes. I came here with like $2,000. Like that's after the flight. Like I'd already paid for my flight, I'd already paid for my Airbnbs, I'd already like bought like my bags and like the things I needed to bring with me. I'd already paid for my visa. Like I think I had like 2,000, maybe 2,500 with me in hand, like accessible when I arrived in Spain. It wasn't enough, I don't think, just personally the way I like to live, because I like to go out, I like to enjoy, and it just like, I would recommend bringing more if you can. And I would definitely recommend bringing more, especially if you're going to be in a larger city like Madrid or Barcelona. And I say I needed more because you're moving, like, and when you move, think about the things you have to pay for when you move, when you're moving even in the US. You have to pay first month's rent, you have to pay for a deposit, sometimes you have to pay last month's rent, you have to buy toiletries, you have to buy cleaning supplies, you have to buy things to like make it homey, and pay for food and all of these things. Like you basically have to fund your lifestyle without getting paid for like a few months. And if you want to travel, that's another thing. I planned a trip to London, hoping that I would get paid on time. I was not paid on time, and I didn't realize that London was expensive. Like when I tell you guys, when I moved to Europe, I'd only been to one country in Europe, Spain, only place I'd ever been. So I didn't really know too much, and as we established, I don't do my research the way I should. So I agreed to a trip that I couldn't afford. We were able to make it work, and I think I ended up spending less than 100 euros after the flight and after accommodation, like just being in London. We did all the free stuff. That's a separate video. I can tell you how to have fun on a budget in a different video. But don't be like me, plan ahead. And I'm in a lot better situation now because I have a remote job that I have in the US. I teach private classes and I work for the ministry, and I'm able to do all that just because my job teaching at the school that I work at is only 16 hours. So I teach a couple classes a week. I work a couple hours a day with my remote job that I got in the US as a content manager. So side hustle, side hustle, side hustle. Can you live off of this once you start getting paid? Sure you can. But I like to travel, I like to eat, I like to enjoy, I like to spend part of my summer here. And our contract in the Valencia region ends at the end of May, which means we get one paycheck after that, and then we don't get paid again till November if we renew, you know? So I like to travel over the summer, and I like to save and plan for that. So if that's something that you're interested in too, I would suggest getting a side hustle and saving your money throughout the year so that you can really fully enjoy your summer. How it is moving abroad emotionally alone. I would say that it's different for everyone, and I struggle with answering that question just because I've always been like a very independent person. I am a twin, and she's my best friend, and I love her, but I also do enjoy being alone. I'm not scared of being alone. Like I'll go out to eat by myself, I like to go shopping by myself, I like to just walk around by myself. Even when I was studying abroad, with a group, whenever like the people in my group started getting on my nerves, I would just leave. Like I would just go walk around the city by myself and had the time of my life. And honestly, I kind of recommend it because you meet more people that way. But anyways, I think I got really lucky in that the group, well, I moved here pre-COVID, so it was easier to meet people. But also the group of people that were all first years, my first year, were all just like amazing, and we all really meshed really well really quickly. So I don't really remember a time where I was just like feeling kind of lonely. And I know that like I'm very lucky to even be able to say that, because for a lot of people that's not their experience. I think I moved here like on like a Wednesday or something. No, I moved here on like a Sunday or whatever, and I met like a bunch of people after I finished finding housing, after I finished like settling in. I was able to go to like meetup groups and meet a bunch of people, and I was able to find like a pretty solid friend group pretty early on. But you also have to put yourself out there. Like I did have to put myself out there in the beginning. Like we have, I don't know if this is true for every city, but we have groups for our city, and like a WhatsApp group. It's like a people over 30 group. There's a sports group. There's a beach group for like volleyball. And people will be like, hey, I'm going to do here. Like if anyone wants to come, I would go. Didn't know them. Never met them. Never seen them. Literally looking around for them, not sure who I'm meeting up with when I get there type situation. And for me, I only had to do that a few times in Alicante, and then I was able to make friends. Very lucky. That's not everyone's case. but that's what you have to do in order to meet people here, because everyone comes here alone. Like, I didn't know anyone. Even my roommate that I met on Facebook, I had never met her in person. We hadn't even talked on the phone. Like, we had just been messaging and texting. So you really have to put yourself out there. I will say that when I moved to Madrid, I did have a little bit of a harder time because, one, Madrid's a bigger city. It was like the height of the pandemic. It was the fall of 2020. And I was in like an unfamiliar city once again, didn't really know anyone. I knew like 2 or 3 people. They were more acquaintances than friends though. So I put myself out there by downloading Bumble Friends. So I know Bumble is notoriously known for being like a dating app, but they do have like a friend and I think a business site as well, where you just like basically the same, like you're like dating but dating for friends. And I would meet up with people that way, and I was able to meet a few girlfriends that way, and that was really fun and cool, because a lot of them were international as well. My first year in Alicante, most of my friends were American or from the UK or from Australia, like all English speaking natively. And in the Madrid, when I was using Bumble Friends, that wasn't the case. Bumble Friends, 10 out of 10 would recommend. I recommend it to all my friends when they move abroad, and they've also been able to meet really cool people that way. Culturally, just come with like an open mind and be ready for anything. I feel like I got like kind of like the inside scoop when I studied abroad, because we get pre-departure meetings where our teacher would prepare us for things that might surprise us when moving abroad. Use YouTube as your resource, use TikTok as your resource, use blogs. Like, there's so much information out there to help you be successful here. And I think as far as like having the confidence to do all of these things, I think maybe it's like this comes with age, but like people don't care as much as you think they do. Like, is what I've learned and realized. Like, I'm not gonna say like don't care what people think, because everyone cares what people think. Even if they say they don't, they probably do on some level care. It's whether or not they adjust their actions to whether or not people care about what they're doing, if that makes sense. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Like, some people modify their actions based on what they think people think of them, and some people know and just don't care. I think that's what people mean when they say they don't care. Not that they don't care, it's that they don't care enough to change what they're doing. You know what I mean? Also, like, everyone here is on the same energy. Like, they're just trying to make new friends, meet new people. Like, almost everyone here comes alone. There are some people who are able to convince their friends to come with them, or maybe they have like a significant other that comes with them. But the majority, I would say like 70 to 80% of us end up here alone, and we all just want to make friends. It's kind of like the first day of school, those first few weeks, where you're trying to like see, oh, I want to be friends with you, oh, I want to be friends with you, oh, I want to be friends with you. And you kind of like niche down when you find like your core group. And I feel like just give yourself the time and the grace to do so. And it's hard. Like, being in Madrid was really hard for me personally, but I made it work, and I was able to meet some really cool people, and you can too. I believe in you. But yeah, that's all I have for you now. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I hope this was helpful. I think now there are even more resources about the program than there was when I first started. Like, there are a lot more YouTubers. TikTok was not that big of a thing when I first started. There's a lot of TikTokers who are currently in the program, so there's so much information out there for you, and I hope you're able to find it. But anyways, you're off to a great start just by even watching this video, so I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.